the regions did numerous events. Some were regionally sponsored, some were not. So it would have been impossible for me to include everything. So I tried to focus on the highlights. And, you know, with the highlights, of course, what every region at least participated in would be the Jamborees. So this is the shoulder patches. It's at least a representation. You'll notice there is no Region 10. I have seen one. I don't have a scan of it. My understanding, I believe Bob Hanna told me the story, was the region decided that they weren't going to hand them out until the troops left for the Jamboree, and it was canceled, of course, before they left. So none of them were handed out. And then 37. Of these, I believe the most difficult is probably Region 12. It was not a large contingent from what I understand, and there just aren't many of them out there. Obviously, Regions 1, 2, and 3 are probably the most common simply because of logistics and the size of the contingents they sent there. From 37 was when the troops were packing up to leave. They could get this little certification, basically signifying that they, properly cleaned their campsite, returned all their wares, and were given this. I haven't seen too many of them out there, but they do exist. And then some interesting items from 37. Some of these I have detailed stories on, some I do not. I can tell you the guide in the top right corner is probably one of the most interesting. That's a Region 3 piece, and I believe it was Sam who actually told me the story. This was given out to, or not given out, but worn by the scouts who actually escorted different visitors and guests through the regional subcamp. So they wore it as an armband. And then you have the different band pieces, and the Paul Bunyan head is actually a large back patch. It doesn't do it justice. I kind of shrunk it down to fit it on the screen, but that was actually part of the 37th band as well for that Jamboree. And then here's a couple gateways from the region. The Region 10 one I think is probably the most notable. It was in several articles back from the Jamboree as well. Here's some other interesting Jamboree items. Every region in the later years pretty much came out with something for the youth to wear. These are some of the more notable ones. The Region 2 Service Patrol is 53. The one to its right is an armband from 50. The two Region 4 bands, the top one is 50. The one with the numeral 4 is 53, and the armband below it went with the 50 Jamboree. Region 3 band on the left was 1950, and the Region 10 at the bottom, 1950 as well. Well, that's an orange one was 1950. There's one that's lighter, that's the yellow from 37, and then the Region 12 piece from 50. Excuse me, and the other ones are kind of dated and speak for themselves. Fun little picture from the Region 11 troop to 47 World. And then here's some interesting region items from the World Jamborees. The two New Englands, the red and white was, I believe, 63, and the khaki and red was 47. The one on the far right, the BSA 6. I've heard numerous stories on this one. Some people say it is a Detroit district. Most of the consensus seems to be that is actually a Region 7 piece, and that was the troop to the 47 World Jamboree. Other one that's undated is the Region 12. In the bottom corner was 47 World Jamboree. And then here's a selection of neckerchiefs, top left corner being Region 1. The other most interesting ones here would be the Texas Longhorns. There was actually 3 troops to that 47 Jamboree, and each troop had its own color and its own name that was screen printed on those neckerchiefs. And then the Region 10 one, the boys were given the patch and a little piece of paper that went with it that instructed them to cut the bottom of the patch off and then sew it on their respective neckerchiefs. All right, activity-wise, there's a lot here. Tried to hit the highlights for the particular regions. I didn't want to go into all the little nuances for each one of them. To be honest, I don't know that I really could. But this is kind of some highlights on Air Scouts and some notable issues from the different Air Scout ones. Here's a Region 8 squadron for Air Scouts. Oh, here's some more Air Scout. And then some Sea Scouts. So most regions did some sort of regatta and or rendezvous. Region 12 and Region 7 are probably the most known for these. Different ships were regional and they competed for national flagships. Some numerous years were awarded year after year, just kind of depending on the ship, the crew. And here's some notable patches go along with those. The most interesting there, I think, is the Region 8 button at the bottom. Most of the stuff is otherwise patches, but I always thought that one was fun. Sea Scout ship, or other portion of the regions and their Sea Scout activities and some of their issues. There was a Region 12 rendezvous on the initial cover. Here's another rendezvous. Most of these were in Newport Harbor. Orange County notably still operates at that location and has a Sea Scout base there on lease from the county. Regarding the Mohawk Indian Village, I included it simply because a lot of people do collect it that are big into Region 1, but the region really didn't have anything to do with it until 31, and then even then it didn't last for very long under the region director. But it was 10 different states as noted, and the different boys that were, I guess, competing to go and participate. Somebody also mentioned Region 3 standard campers. So here, there's numerous years. 29 was the first year that we're aware of, and 52 is the last year we're aware of. And I don't know of any years that it did not take place or there weren't any issues for. Region 4, so you've got these Dan Brawls. So everything I found, it was a regional sponsored event, although many people from outside the region actually attended it, but Dan Beard, obviously from Kentucky, it was a pretty widely attended event and very popular for many years within the region. So the Region 6 Jubilees are not very well known. It only took place for 4 years, and they were usually in conjunction kind of with other events going on. One of the more famous would be the Region 7 First Aid Meets. So they actually started off on troop levels and then on up to councils and sections all the way up to regions. And the different scouts were graded on proficiency, both written test and practical application. And then you've got the different Region 10 University and Eagle Scout trails. I think these are pretty popular as well, at least with the Region 10 folks. Here's a fun picture from Region 10. And then Region 11, they kind of did a similar Eagle Scout trail like Region 10 did, as well as their forestry camp. Region 12, other than the rendezvous, they were really big on these older scout conferences, which is basically a way to keep the youth involved as they got older in scouting. And they started off as part of the state fair, and then they kind of became their own thing, and then expanded on to the different patrollier conferences throughout the region. Here's a picture from one down in San Diego. Probably one of the areas that's near and dear to me is the slides. So this is just a quick representation of them. Probably the Region 6 leather, I know dates to the 28 biennial training conference, is probably the earliest region slide that we're aware of. The Region 10 Indian Chief, there's only a couple of those known. Those were hand carved and handed out to professionals. And the Region 7 with the little globe on it was 47 World Jamboree contingent item. And then another little fun piece of history is I know Region 2 did it, and Region 9 was very big in it, but these are actually large, I'll call them pennants for lack of a better term, that the region hung at their headquarters at the different jamborees. I know they were used for other events as well, but I can only pinpoint them for sure at the jamborees. And that's really about all I've got for youth events. Like I said, I could go on all kinds of little nuances with them, but I just kind of wanted to give an overview of them.
Can determine, which region they are, but the other symbols on the 35 and 37s, what do they represent?
Yes.
Yeah.
So region, so like Region 1, Section E, Troop 33.
Okay, section. So that's the section of the whole jamboree where they camp.
Yes, sir.
And you can think about the section as like little sub camps, kind of. Correct.
So same concept.
Yeah. And Ryan, on that slide, this is Sam Fairchild. On that slide, I'm pretty certain at this stage that if you ever do see a Region 10, it's probably a fabrication, because the records from Region 10 show that they were all destroyed. If you tell me maybe the regional executive slipped one out, I can't tell you that he didn't or did. But
Yeah.
the records show that they were destroyed.
There still is not a comprehensive list of which troops the numbers represented. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's ES Post, who was the director, you might say, the program director of the Jamboree, had in his estate a map, and the map had a listing on it that actually associated councils to troop numbers. Okay, so there is somewhere, if someone has a copy of that map, and it was not an original map, there were obviously copies of it. There is a list somewhere. I have ES Post's estate, and there was a reference to it in his writing, but I never found the actual map itself. But it exists somewhere, so